Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be talking a little bit about the box office coming out this weekend. What is coming out to possibly finally dethrone Shang-Chi? How much is the film expected to make? And also, what is exactly the break-even number for this new movie, Dear Evan Hansen, and also for other films like Shang-Chi and No Time to Die? And I've added a new category into my box office breakdown chart because I know a lot of people typically are interested in those kinds of numbers as well. But before going any further, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So let's first start off by talking about the only major release set to come out this weekend, which is Dear Evan Hansen, which, unless you're a fan of musical theater, probably means very little to you. In fact, you probably, like me, are going to look at this photo right here and say, oh my goodness, what in the world have they done to this man's face? And that's because it's a 27-year-old man trying to play a teenager. Now, of course, this is nothing new. We've seen this happen in countless television shows and in countless movies. And to be fair, I'm actually happy that this is the actor Ben Platt who is playing this role in the film, because he's the guy that originated the role on Broadway. I actually am a musical theater fan, and I'm a big fan actually of the music to this show. I've never actually seen the show live, but I've listened to the soundtrack countless times because the music is actually really, really good. That being said, when I found out that the film was actually being made, I had no idea. When the trailer came out, I was so surprised because I said, wait a minute, I had no idea that this was ever being made. You have other musicals like Wicked, which has been around since, 2003? And there's been talks of a movie version of that film since around, I think, 2003, or at least very early 2000s. And that film has been in just delay. And yet this one, which is, again, a film, or rather a musical that was incredibly hot recently as far as popularity on Broadway, again, back in 2016, won 6 out of the 9 categories that it was nominated for at the Tonys. I was just kind of amazed that they actually went ahead with this project, and I've already kind of made my opinion on them as far as the casting for this film is concerned, because it's great to see people like Ben Platt brought back, but when they're going to go ahead and kind of mess up his face like this with either some type of de-aging or some type of really bad makeup effect, it just doesn't look natural. It just doesn't look good. And then instead of them bringing in actors that are known for their singing talents, instead of actors that can kind of sing in certain things, I guess, they, again, decided to go with bigger names. And so that's why you do have some bigger names in this film. You have people like, Amy Adams, Julianne Moore in this film. And so obviously I know that Amy Adams, at the very least, does have a history of singing in films, with films like Enchanted, but again, not really known to be a singer per se. It would have been really nice if they were actually able to get some of the original Broadway talent into this film, like Ben Platt instead, because I think it would have done a little bit better with the musical theater crowd if that was the case, because this is already a movie that is not going to be a huge financial box office major hit by the very fact that it's very limiting. Whenever you have a musical coming out in modern day times, it really is limited to the typical high school musical theater crowd, maybe early college, maybe even, of course, early adult crowds that tend to be more likely to go see those kinds of movies. And obviously that's not the rule, but that is typically the audience that they're going to be able to bring out. And that audience, though they are very passionate, is not large enough to be able to bring financial success even to a film that has a relatively low budget in comparison to other films set to come out. But is this film going to be enough? And will it make enough to dethrone films like Shang-Chi? Shang-Chi is now going into its 4th weekend, and obviously it's had very small drop-offs between every single one of its weeks. It is very much on the way and on pace to break even, either sometime this weekend at the earliest, or at the very least in a couple of weeks. If I had to bet, I would say probably a couple of weeks would be the more likely scenario. Obviously, you have films like Dune that are going to be still taking up some of the foreign marketplace. You have other films like No Time to Die and others that are set to also get early releases very soon. So obviously Shang-Chi's international box office is going to be rather limited in the days ahead. But when it comes to the domestic market, there is no denial that Shang-Chi has owned the box office, as nothing has been able to really come out and provide any actual competition. So last week, it was in the 20s as far as millions of dollars. And so many people expect that if we see a typical 30 to 40% drop like we've seen in other weeks for Shang-Chi, the film will probably make somewhere between maybe $10 to $15 million. And of course, it could be more, could be less. Who knows? Depends on how low the drop is, especially since this is the only competition going on right now. So, of course, we'll have to wait and see what the actual Thursday night numbers are, Friday night morning numbers, and then we finally, after Friday, typically get, early Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, a bit of an estimate as to what the film is really pacing to do for the weekend. But the question is, of course, can Dear Evan Hansen dethrone Shang-Chi? According to Variety, it says here, it's the big screen adaptation of the beloved Broadway musical premiering this weekend. The Universal film, which sees Ben Platt reprising his Tony-winning role, is projected to debut to approximately $10 million from 3,300 North American cinemas. So it's already at a bit of a disadvantage because Shang-Chi, even though it's been out for 4 weeks, is still going to be out at as many, if not more, theaters. So it's already going to be kind of outpaced in that respect. And also a $10 million opening for a film that cost $28 million is not all that impressive. Obviously, we're dealing with pandemic times. That's obviously going to always be the built-in excuse. But at the same time, it also kind of shows that there are movies that are coming out consistently now that really just don't drive movie lovers to go watch and go see these films. I think that especially now that they're pushing very hard for the theatrically exclusive label to be put on, only in theaters label to be put on, that when you start to see numbers like this, you start to realize, yeah, a lot of people are still very much used to or would very much rather wait for the film to be released online or would prefer it to be released online via whatever streaming service they potentially have. Now, as you all know, I'm a big fan of movie theaters. I think movie theaters are great. I think that, and really want movie theaters to succeed. At the same time, I am also a bit of a realist, and I try to, again, look at the numbers in as realistic of a fashion as I can. So when I hear people saying the box office is back, baby, with films like Shang-Chi, and then I actually look at how it's one of the lowest grossing MCU films of all time and how its numbers really don't even compare to films more recently in the MCU history, you start to realize that the box office, though it is definitely recovering to some extent, is nowhere near where it should be. Now, it goes on to say, as an opening weekend haul of below $10 million isn't ideal for any major studio release. However, Dear Evan Hansen carries a modest $28 million production budget, meaning it does not have to sell as many tickets to turn a profit. Again, that is true. It then goes on to say that apparently the people over at Rotten Tomatoes hate this film, which tells me that the film probably isn't as bad. Now, they are apparently having an issue with the film because of the plot, and the issue that I have with that is that many of these same people are likely the ones who were fans of the original Broadway story. So as long as the story hasn't been changed all that much, it makes very little sense to me that they would finally all of a sudden now be against it. Unless, of course, the politics of the day has changed, and so they've decided, oh, well, because it's featuring a white male lead, now we can't like the film anymore. That would be my guess, based on just the current way that they've been treating a lot of different movies. However, the one thing I will say that I think is a valid criticism, though, again, I'm kind of mixed on it myself, is the casting of a 27-year-old to play a high school student. That being said, I guarantee you any single person in their reviews who brings that point up, we can probably find somewhere in their past a comment about a TV series or about a movie series where they don't reference the fact that a person playing a certain role isn't the actual age of the person on screen. And obviously, if someone's being consistent, then hey, at least they have consistency to go along with them. But if they're not being consistent, I think that can be a bit of a problem. One of the reasons why I do have some hopes, I guess you could say, for this film is because it is done and directed by Steven Chbosky. Again, I'm probably mispronouncing that in some way, but he has done some pretty amazing films. He did a film called Wonder a few years back, which was one of my favorite films of that year, about a kid who has whose face is deformed and is going through school. And again, it just really just tugs at the heartstrings. There's a really great story about him and his sister, because his sister feels like her life has kind of been isolated because it's been all about her brother and not really about her. And so she's trying to find her own voice too. So it's just really, again, I think a very beautiful story. You have The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which also I was actually a pretty big fan of as well. Then you have, of course, films like Beauty and the Beast and Rent. Again, Rent overall, it is what it is. But for a adaptation to a movie, I thought it did as well of a job as it possibly could. So he has a pretty good, pedigree is the word that they use in here, but he has a very good, I think, list of credits to be able to produce a pretty good film. So I'm willing to give this film a shot personally because, as I mentioned, and I'm kind of a musical theater kid at heart. It goes on to say, there's a chance that audiences rebuff Dear Evan Hansen, in which case Disney's superhero Shang-Chi will retain the number one spot. The Marvel comic book adaptation starring Simu Liu and Awkwafina has been a reliable draw in recent weeks and has easily ruled over the competition last 3 weekends because there has not been any competition. Again, just a little bit of adding a factual data there. Should Shang-Chi see a decline comparable to recent weeks, it should collect another $10 to $12 million. And so that is what they are expecting this film to make at this point in time, is another $10 to $12 million this weekend. All the while, of course, you have recent announcements by Disney CEO Bob Chapek of a Disney Plus Day this year, in which case not only in November will you see Jungle Cruise released on Disney Plus for free, you also see Shang-Chi released on Disney Plus for free, amongst some other prospects there. The one that kind of caught my eye is the fact that there's apparently going to be a special celebrating the origins and legacy of bounty hunter Boba Fett. As we all know, though, they're not really going to give us the true history of the story, because they're not going to probably mention the fact that his ship's name is Slave One and is not whatever it is that they decided to come up with instead, to be a little bit more politically correct. So we have at least that to look forward to. As far as the actual box office is concerned for Dear Evan Hansen, as it's mentioned, it cost $28 million to actually make the film, meaning that marketing is going to be, again, with marketing, is going to be around $42 million total. Cost of the production with marketing, meaning that the break-even number is around $70 million. So this is going to be a bit of a steep climb for a film. We can look to other films that came out this year that might be in a similar category. I would say the most similar film would probably be the movie In the Heights, as it was also a musical. That film debuted to $11 million worldwide, $21 million by its second weekend, and got nowhere near the expected amount of money that it needed to break even. The last update that I had for that one was that it had made around $39 million. So obviously, again, pretty far off the pace there. The one difference is the fact that that movie did have a day-and-date release on HBO Max, of which Dear Evan Hansen is not having. However, with a debut expected to be around $10 million, we do see that the film is set to have, again, around the same amount of money debut. So even the day-and-date release of In the Heights is not going to really be any different than the theatrically exclusive release of a film like Dear Evan Hansen. So I think that also kind of calls into question about how much impact day-and-date release is even having on movies, since they're very similar. They deal with very similar, I guess you could say, markets. They deal with very similar types of audiences. So again, really, who knows at this point if we can really even use the day-and-date release as an excuse for films. Again, I know I've brought it up previously, but again, I think stuff like this does kind of make us start to ask those questions. But is it going to be able to be enough to be able to continue and bring it on to $70 million unless this film is a random hit domestically or internationally? It does not seem the case, so we're looking probably another small budget financial failure again this year. We've seen a lot of these, unfortunately, this year, and that, I think, is the big test of whether the market is back. If the smaller budget films can't make their money back, I think that that is a big indication that we have a ways to go still for the actual box office itself. For other films that are set to come out, so I know that some people are interested to see the numbers on this. So for films like let's see here, Dune, I now have up here, right, what the actual break-even number is. That's $412.5 million is the money it needs to make to break even. And then you have, of course, the ridiculously expensive No Time to Die, with the lower-end estimate $300 million production budget, which would mean around $450 million marketing, meaning the film has to make $750 million worldwide in order for the film to break even. Now, theoretically, is it possible for the film to make it? Sure, anything is theoretically possible. Is it going to actually reach the point? I think that a lot of people probably have some doubts about that, and I would not disagree with them. But if you are interested in break-even numbers and to see exactly where films stand up to their break-even numbers, go ahead and check out my website, ombreviews.com, and check out the box office tracking, and you can find exactly what the movies have made so far. Obviously, sometimes I update them week by week, so you might have some numbers in there that won't be updated until this coming weekend, but otherwise you can find some pretty accurate numbers as far as what films have actually made, and also what the likely break-even number and break-even point is for any given movie at any given time. For instance, like Jungle Cruise, that film needed to make $500 million to break even, and as you can see, it is very, very far away from that break-even number, despite the fact that domestically it actually was doing relatively strong later in its release. But hey, a little too late. What are your thoughts about this, though? Are you excited for Dear Evan Hansen? Are you one of those few people like myself who actually is like, hey, this is a movie that I could probably actually watch because, hey, I like musicals. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And also, do you think that Shang-Chi is going to reign supreme for the fourth week in a row? I would say it's actually pretty likely, just because of the fact that this is, again, given that $10 million estimate. We'll see these estimates update as the days go on. I think that Shang-Chi will probably have a higher estimate than Dear Evan Hansen, and Again, of all the films to kind of dethrone this movie, I don't think it's going to be this one. We have a better idea or some bigger films set to come out October 1st that will likely be the first films to actually dethrone Shang-Chi. At that point, though, it'll be in its 5th week, so it's really not going to be saying a whole lot for that to have dethroned it at that point, regardless of what the movie is. So I think it, again, is just something worth noting and talking about. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my September Locals, Patreon, and Subscribestar members. First with my Locals members, Cats App, D Sharp, It's a Modern Major General Story, Laura Bifford Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. I want to give a shout out to, especially to Laura, who is now a double supporter on Locals and on Patreon, so thank you for that. And to all of my Locals members. A shout out also to my Patreon members, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, Hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura the Modern Major General Story once again, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. And a shout out also to my Subscribestar members, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for supporting the channel. And I want to give a huge shout out to new members, one-time supporters over on Locals, Kara Tharp, K Tharp 56, and Brett D 90. Thank you again for being a one-time supporter over on Locals, and also to my newest Patreon member, Stan Gunovic. And hopefully I pronounced that correctly, but thank you for being my newest members. It really does mean a lot. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every single video or live stream on the main channel, please check out the links in the description below, specifically that top link, which will bring you to all of the links to my various social media pages and also places of support as well. And remember that if you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also get access to giveaways of 4K titles. Right now, I have a live giveaway of Snatch on 4K Steelbook. I've also got ones for Dread, Wrath of Man Blu-ray. I've also got A Quiet Place Part 2 on 4K. I've got Top Gun on 4K, Sicario on 4K, tons of films and more to come, especially as more films are getting released for those giveaways. At the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get all of that, plus you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. Not only do you get to listen to the podcast, you also get to ask questions that we answer as much as we can and as fully as we can in a much more, I guess you could say, uncensored way, but again, a much more free-flowing way for our members over there at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. And if you join the Chosen of Valhalla level, you get access to all of those things, plus in your first month, you get a free t-shirt, your choice, and I send it to you no matter where you are in the world. And also, you get to once a month be featured on the channel in the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we talk about movie, news, and pretty much anything that you want to talk about. So if that all sounds like fun to you, check out those links below. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.